welcome back. Today we're going to talk about a great topic and it's called smooth communication. We know that people like them. That kind of makes sense, I know. So if you were going to have great communication with someone, the key would be to be like them, because they're going to like you if you're like them. How do we do that? The first thing we need to do is start matching someone. Matching them, pacing them, or if you like, following them. Be like them. There's 5 things we can check in to try and match them. The first thing is physiology. How they hold themselves, how they act, how they move, how they behave. How do they sit in a chair? How do they stand? Do they cross their legs? How do they move their hands? How do they move their head? Where do they look, up or down? We know that physiology accounts for 55% of the communication that someone does. 55% of the language, of the communication that occurs between two individuals is their physiology. It's how they hold themselves. So matching their physiology is key in smooth communication. Have some fun with that. If they cross their legs, you cross yours. If they wave their hands around a little bit, wave your hands around a little bit. You know, if they're nodding their head when they're talking, nod your head when they're talking. Have some fun. It can be really cool. First thing, physiology. Second thing, it's what they say. So we have different ways that we like to express ourselves. Different ways that I'm going to say the word create pictures in our head because I'm a visual communicator. But there's 3 channels that we generally communicate on. One is visual. We talk in pictures. We talk in movement. We talk in colour. The second way is, of course, auditory. We talk about sounds, how things sound. Loud, quiet, noisy. And the last way we communicate, of course, is in kinesthetic terms. We talk about things being heavy, weighty, light, easy, smooth, comfortable. So those 3 communication channels, and we're going to do a whole section on that separately another day. But just know that what you say is important and matching what they say is key. Lastly, how you say it. Do they talk loud or do they talk quietly? Do they talk quick or do they talk a little slower? Have they got a rhythm to the way they talk or do they just talk out of rhythm? Matching how they say it is important because we know that people like us. So the more you're like them, the easier the communication is going to be. 4th thing, values and beliefs. You want to check in and just try and find areas where values and beliefs between yourself and the person you're communicating with match. So I'm not saying change your values and beliefs, but look for areas where they match. Because again, people like us. And lastly and importantly, history. Just look for past experiences, stories that you've got that you can share that match their history and their stories. Again, you know, when there's a similarity, when there's a history that you share, again, that helps create that matching. It helps create the ability to pace and follow that person. Really cool. Once you're starting to match, you'll start to feel their state. You'll start to get a sense of how they're feeling. You'll start to get a sense of their map about how the game of life is played. And that's really cool because people like them. We like people like us. That's the first thing in smooth communication. Match the person you're trying to communicate with. Take responsibility for that. Be at cause. And then secondly, check in, calibrate. Have you got rapport? Are you communicating? Are you on the same page? And you can do that by a few things. Do you have the feeling of being connected? Do you feel like when you're communicating with them, there's this love. There's this sense of, you know, you're on the same page. You know, there's a feeling to it. I know that's a bit, you know, woo-woo, but there is. I'm sure you'd agree. Secondly, skin colour change. You know, when we've got some affection, when we've got some rapport with someone, we often get a little flushed. Check out that. You'll often feel the person starting to warm, if you like, warm to you. And you can see that in skin colour change. Very, very cool to check out. And lastly, they'll start to say things like, I agree. Spontaneously, they'll start communicating that you're on the same page. I agree. That makes sense. I understand. Yes. And then lastly, they may start to match you. So if you were playing with it, we talked earlier about physiology. If they sit with their legs crossed, you sit with your legs crossed, you may start to notice that if you uncross your legs, they start uncrossing their legs. And that brings me on to this third point here, that once you've got rapport, once you're matching them, you have an opportunity, if you've got that rapport, to change your state, and then they will start to follow you. You then start to lead the person. And of course, this is what we do in coaching. When we start with a client, we want to match them. We want to get into their world, understand their state. It's so important, and many people often don't do that. But of course, they're not there to stay in that state. Most clients come to us because they want to change state. They want to do something new, move into some unknown territory. For us to do that, first of all, we match their state, and then we start to lead them. We start to change our state. We start moving them to the direction they want to go into. Incredibly cool. Sometimes though, we also need to change state again, and maybe change state in a mismatch. We need to wow, do something completely different and something freaky. And that'll often break them out of that previous state they've been into as well. That's a big one. Again, not enough time to talk about that today, but that old mismatch can be cool. And lastly, super important, this is not about manipulating someone. This is about a win-win. You want to check in with your ecology. Is this communication, is this whole matching and leading the person, is that congruent? Like we talked about before, they may have values and beliefs. So I'm not saying change yours. So you just need to check in that, is this communication on track with your values and beliefs? And then of course, make sure that it is a win-win. This is not about manipulating someone for an unresourceful outcome. This is about, is it a win-win for them, and is it a win-win for you? So this is not about manipulation. This is about checking in, pacing someone, and then leading them to a win-win situation, leading them to an outcome that is resourceful for them and of course for you. So I hope that made sense. Smooth communication, check in, match them, be like them. We know people like them. We like people like us. Once you've got that, just check in, calibrate, make sure that you feel like that, that there's this rapport has been established, and then you've got the opportunity to start leading them. And then finally, of course, make sure that it's a win-win. Well, I hope that made sense. Until next time, live life, perform at your best, and be well.